Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Today we have with us Dr. Mark Hyman. It's definitely an interesting show, especially since I've had a lot of guests on lately that are leaning towards the low-fat vegan movement, backed by a lot of science, backed by a lot of results, and it seems totally contradictory towards the paleo keto movement, which also gets a lot of results and is a totally opposite diet. It's a high fat, low carb. So which one's right? This is a question that you need to ask yourself. You need to try on a diet, look at the labs, work with your doctor, and see how you feel. If you feel amazing eating vegan low fat and you're getting great results and you can back it up with the lab results, then that's the right one for you. If you're eating a more paleo or more low carb and yet lots of vegetables, low carb doesn't mean no vegetables. Low carb means avoiding processed foods, processed sugars, avoiding grains or eating a small amount of whole grains, and incorporating a lot of healthy fat. So think of, you can do a very unhealthy paleo or a very unhealthy keto. You could also do a very unhealthy vegan. Just because, Oreos are vegan, right? So just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's healthy. Just because it's keto or paleo doesn't mean it's healthy. But looking at these macros and going, okay, am I eating a high healthy fat and low carbohydrate diet? And does my body resonate with that? Can I really back it with all of the blood work? And can I see that in the long term, this is the best thing for me and my cardiovascular health and my mental health and my blood sugar stability? And then looking at my hormone health, right? And then looking at the vegan low fat and going, okay, this in the long term, am I going in the right direction? So we need to ask ourselves these questions, and we need to bring in the blood work, because I was doing like the more keto paleo for the last year. And I used it several years ago. I used this way of eating where it was really high healthy fats, really low carb, still lots of vegetables, right? You want to get all the phytonutrients from our vegetables. And I reversed my polycystic ovarian syndrome. I reversed my type 2 diabetes. I got my chronic adrenal fatigue under control. I became so much healthier and happier. My immune system was functioning well. So I really thought I was in the right direction. But my recent blood work with my naturopath shows that I am elevated for cardiovascular markers that are going in the wrong direction. So what's going on? I was eating super healthy, in the keto and paleo world, but when looking at the blood work, there's clearly I'm not going in the right direction. And so there's something to this. We have to look at what Dr. Esselstyn has done. I definitely want to go back. You want to go back and listen to that episode. He's a cardiologist who reverses heart disease and prevents heart disease with diet alone. And then I also interviewed Dr. Jack Wolfson, who is a cardiologist who with diet alone and some supplements will help to reverse and prevent heart disease. And I also interviewed Dr. William Davis, who's a cardiologist who reverses heart disease and other diseases using food and some supplements. All three of them have totally different diets. And so this is the rub. Which one is the right one? Is there one right diet for everyone? I don't believe there is. I really believe that we need to dial in what's right for us and what's right for us right now. Because the demands your body had when you were 20 years old are significantly different from the demands your body has when you're 40 years old and 60 years old. So we need to be flexible in our diet as we age and constantly look at, am I getting the results that I want to get? Am I achieving the results I'm setting out to achieve? Because an Olympic athlete has a different demand and a different result that they're looking for than someone who has obesity and diabetes. The two of them shouldn't be on the same diet because they just have completely different nutrient needs. And yet the diet that would best suit them is the best one for them at that moment. So today, I just wanted to clarify that today with Dr. Mark Hyman, what I really like about this interview is that he brings to the table a way of eating that I think a lot of people could adapt, and I think it's a great starting point. because he's asking you to lower the amount of meat you're taking and look at the quality of meat. So instead of us going out and just buying any kind of meat, looking at, if you're a meat eater, let's dial in really healthy meat that is very healthy sourced and also better for the planet, which is better for your body in so many ways, and taking a portion control into consideration, and then looking at grains and what grains are healthy, what grains aren't healthy, looking at vegetables, looking at your fat consumption, which is healthy, which isn't healthy. And so he has a very easy way of dialing in your diet, and I think it's a great starting point for a lot of people who want to adjust their diet. Let's say you're just so busy, you're eating out a lot of the time, and you really want to get healthy, but you just don't know where to start. I think that Mark Hyman's way of eating is a fantastic place to start. And I think for some people to really get a lot of health results, to get 100% of their health results, they might need to tweak it a bit more beyond that. But this is a really great place to start. I still think that Dr. Esselstyn, who promotes the vegan low-fat diet, he's onto something. He clearly is, because he has over 40 years of experience reversing heart disease, and he has studies to show it, to prove it. So we can't completely omit the vegan low-fat diet, but we can't completely omit the other diets that also are showing great results. And this is why we need to work with the naturopath or work with our holistic health practitioner, look at our lab work, and make sure that when we tweak our diet, that we are 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, we're going in the right direction. And so this is what I've been doing since January with my husband. We have gone more plant-based. We've gone meatless. And now I'm get to see, this is the fun part. You get to see this with me. What's going to happen in 6 months? What's going to happen in 4 to 6 months when I get my blood work done again? Am I going to go in the right direction with my markers and see that I am now healthier as a result, or not? So we will see. I eat organic as much as possible. I eat lots and lots of vegetables. We're still gluten free, but the grains we do eat are whole grains. So when we do eat grains, and we're making sure that we keep our fat consumption down to only super healthy fats like from chia and flax and nuts and avocado. Now, two fun things that you should know. One is that when I was part of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition's year-long health coach training program, Mark Hyman was one of the teachers. And so I learned from him, and that's why I wanted to have him on the show. I've had a lot of the teachers from IIN, or Institute for Integrative Nutrition, on the show. It was so interesting to learn from him. So if you love learning from him as you're listening today, you would absolutely love attending IIN. If you want a year-long personal growth, just like a dive in and learn from hundreds of people about how to gain your health back. If you love my podcast, I mean, IIN is even deeper into health and healing. Now, at the very end, you become a health coach, and you're able to work with people and work with clients, and you can go on to write books, or work in doctors' offices, work in hospitals, or help people one-on-one or in groups. And there's so many different ways you can take health coaching. But I would have done it even just for the personal growth because of how much I learned. So I really do recommend, if that's something that interests you, check out IIN. Just Google IIN or Google the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. The link will also be in the show notes of the podcast. And this year, at the beginning of January, I negotiated a really great rate. So in fact, the best price you will ever get is when you tell them that I sent you, that Ashley James Learn True Health podcast, because I have referred so many of my listeners have gone through their course now, that gone through their program now, that I've made sure that I've been able to secure the best rate for you guys, which is really exciting. The second thing is, and I announced this on the podcast recently, but I have been looking for the last few years for a sauna, and I've looked at a lot of sauna companies, and I finally decided the right sauna for myself and my family, but also I realized that I needed to detoxify. I was having a lot of problems with heavy metals, and I needed to figure out a way that would best support my body in eliminating them. So I finally decided on Sunlighten, which is a fantastic company. It's an amazing sauna, and they have, unlike all the other saunas out there, they have patents. And I've looked into their science, and if you want any of their science, and you want me to send you any of their articles or research or third party information, you can just email me, support@learntourhealth.com. I'd love to share it with you. What's really funny is that as I was buying my sauna from Sunlight, I discovered that Dr. Mark Hyman was also one of their clients, was one of their customers, and that he himself has the Solo. So their Solo sauna is really interesting if you live in an apartment or a small home, or you don't have the space for like a full-on wooden sauna that you sit in, which is about the size of a closet. It's not, I mean, it's not huge, but I can actually sit in it with my husband. It's sort of like a TARDIS, in that it does not, it looks like the size of a closet from the outside, but then my husband and I can both fit in it, which is great, because they call it a one person, but it's like a really roomy one person, or a really cozy two-person sauna. And that's the one we got, which is the 3-in-1, because it has the full spectrum. It has true far infrared, mid infrared, and near infrared, and that is the full spectrum. So you get the maximum amount of healing, the maximum amount of penetration into your soft tissue. The mid infrared is fantastic for detoxification. Most saunas out there don't have mid infrared, and so I found their science really exciting. But Dr. Mark Hyman said he didn't have room for that one, so he bought the Solo. So if you don't have room and you're like thinking, I'd love a sauna, but I don't have enough room, the Solo is fantastic because it is portable. It's, you lay down on it. It's a mat with 5 infrared squares, and you lay down on it, and then it has a dome that you put over yourself, so you can lie on your bed or you can lie on the floor, and it's really comfortable. And then you have a nice sweat, but you're also relaxing because you're lying down. Super exciting. And then you can pack it up, and it packs up really well, and you can travel with it. In fact, the next episode I'm going to release with Ryan and Teddy, and they're from My Kid Cures Cancer. When their child, who was after just a year old, was diagnosed with cancer, they got the Solo because they were traveling to hospitals, and he was in the hospital, his hospital room, and they had to travel to different experts and get surgeries on the other side of the country. And so they bought the Solo because they could have him be in the sauna, because it's so good for children. Can do it too. It's safe for children. They just do it less time. So for every minute, it's every year of age, they do 1 minute at a time. So if it's a 1-year-old, they sweat for 1 minute basically. And so you can travel with it, or if you just tuck it away in your closet when you're not using it. But that's the Solo. And I ended up getting the 3-in-1, which is the wooden sauna. I love it. I've used it almost every day since I got it. We've had it for about 2 weeks, and I have lost weight. I feel amazing. My energy is up. I'm feeling my immune system. I've actually been around some sick people and didn't catch anything, so I'm really impressed with how it's helping me detoxify the heavy metals. And it was cool knowing that Dr. Mark Hyman was also a big fan of Sunlight, and so that kind of solidified for me that I had chosen the right company. When after I chose Sunlight, and I discovered that all these other people that I follow also believe in their company. So if you want a Sunlight, because I told them, listen, if I have a good experience with you guys, because I was buying it for myself, but I knew I was going to tell my listeners about it, because I know a lot of you are looking to detox heavy metals as well, and also environmental pollutants and the obesogens, right? Think about all of the plastics, all of the BPAs, and all these environmental pollutants that our body is storing that your liver has no idea how to process, or your liver's been compromised because of the dirty genes that we've been learning about, like the MTHFR. And so the best thing to do is to support the body detoxification through sweating. Obviously, we want to support the digestive system to detoxify and remove and eliminate as much as possible, and the kidneys. But sweating is so incredibly healthy, and I've had several experts, including Dr. Klinghardt, on the show discussing that. So if you're interested, if you've been thinking about a sauna, highly, highly recommend checking out Sunlight and giving them a call. They were amazing with explaining all their information and sharing all their studies with me. I can personally hook you up with the rep that I've been dealing with. Just go ahead and email me, support@learntruehealth.com. I'd love to help you. Or you just give them a call. They're really, really helpful. And they're not into like high pressure sales, which is great because I would not have gone with them otherwise. But I made sure that we got some deal for the Learn True Health listeners. So if you do decide to go get a sauna from them, then you will get free shipping. And they also said that they would honor giving you $100 off any accessories that you'd want with your sauna, which is really great. The this free shipping, by the way, can be something like $600 off. So that is a lot of money. So that's really, really great because some of these saunas are quite heavy. Another great thing to know about Sunlight is they have a fantastic financing, which I took advantage of, and it was so easy. I was really surprised at how easy it was to go through that process. So if you've been sitting around going, I'd love a sauna, but I can't afford one, they make it very affordable. Same with IIN, actually. They have financing as well, and they often will do no interest, and it's super affordable. So those two programs highly recommend if you want to become a health coach or you're just really into this information, learning more and diving in deeper, then check out IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And if you want a sauna, definitely recommend Sunlight, and check them out as well. And if you ever have any questions for me at all, please feel free to email me, support@learntruehealth. I love hearing from the listeners and I love replying. I love helping you guys. You're my tribe and I want to help you as much as possible to achieve true health. Enjoy today's interview. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 237. I'm very excited for today's guest. He is right up there with all of my health heroes, Dr. Mark Hyman. He's got a new book coming out, and I had a wonderful read. This entire book, I couldn't put it down. And, I read a lot of health books. What I love about his book, Food, What the Heck Should We Eat? It's so easy to read, and you really Dr. Mark Hyman laid out all the science. And I'm so glad he's here today because I have had a series of wonderful interviews in which have completely contradictory information. And so hopefully you can help us to myth bust. Welcome to the show.
Well, I'm so happy to be here with you and to be able to share some, I think, myth busting and eye-opening information about nutrition, which most of us are so confused about.
It is really crazy. Just to give you an example, I've had 3 cardiologists on the show. You probably know them, or at least some of them. All 3 of them have successfully, and many of their patients reversed, multiple clogs in the heart. Dr. Esselstyn, who promotes an extremely low-fat plant-based diet. Dr. Jack Wolfson, who says the paleo diet is the key. So there's no grains there, really healthy fats, healthy vegetables. And then Dr. William Davis, who says blood sugar is the key. And so they all have similarities and they all have really big differences.
Yeah.
Is fat good? Is fat bad? Is salt good? Is salt bad? Are grains good or grains bad? So we've got all of these myths that we really need to sift through and decide what is the best diet for my body. And I love that your book really lays it out. But before we get into all that, for the listeners who've never heard of you, could you share a bit about your story and your background and what led you to want to become this leading author in how to get healthy?
Well, it's a long story, but it started off when I was a kid. I grew up in Spain, and my mom shopped at the fresh markets every day for fresh food. I don't even think you had refrigerators back then. I always grew up eating fresh real food. My mother had a garden in the backyard in our suburban house in Toronto. I used to go out and we had fruit trees in our backyard. So I was always used to eating real food. And my mother always followed my grandmother's advice, which was buy fresh, eat fresh. I did, get a little bit of margarine and I got some Tang and some of those 70s, astronaut food, but mostly it was really healthy. And then I, got very into health and wellness. My sister became a vegetarian when she was in college and I followed her along with that. And then I went to college and I was very interested in health and nutrition. In fact, started studying nutrition at Cornell with Colin Campbell back in 1978. That was 40 years ago, and I'm reflecting back on that. So I'm that old. And so I've been studying nutrition for 40 years, and I live with a nutrition PhD student who gave me a book called Nutrition Against Disease by Roger Williams, which is a brilliant book about how we can cure disease using food as medicine. And this is way before his time. And then I, kind of became a yoga teacher, was always interested in wellness and health, and was a vegetarian for 10 years. And it's interesting, I was looking back at pictures of myself when I was a vegetarian. I would run 5 miles a day, I would do yoga every day. I was eating really healthy. I wasn't like a junk food vegetarian. And I'm 58 now, and I look at my body, 30, 40 years ago when I was a vegetarian, and I was this scrawny thing with no muscle mass. And now exercising far less, but changing my diet to a more high fat, low starch diet, um, with adequate amount of good quality protein, I am far more muscular and fit than I was when I was like 20. It was just kind of shocking to see those pictures of myself the other day that a friend had of me from college. And I think that then I kind of always sort of was wondering about health and nutrition, studying it. Then I got very sick. I went to work at Canyon Ranch, which is a health resort, and I got very sick from mercury poisoning from being in China.
Wow.
And it forced me to discover this whole new world of functional medicine, which was a very coherent systems view of the body, looking at how everything is connected and how we deal with the root causes and treating the system, not the symptoms. And food was the main medicine. Food is medicine. It's not just like medicine, it actually is a drug. And it works faster, better, and cheaper than most drugs. I was talking to one of my colleagues at Cleveland Clinic yesterday, and she's like, "We're having trouble with these diabetics because we change their diet and they blood sugars get really low because their medications are too much, and it works within literally days. People are getting off 50, 60 units of insulin. So it's a good problem to have. So that's really the story. And then I just have been passionate about sharing the story of functional medicine with so many people and really pushing forward this movement and trying to teach people about what the science is, because there's so much emotion, there's so much dogma, there's so much confusing information, there's so much conflicting science. Like, how do you make sense of it all? And I've been at this for 40 years, and I can kind of smell what's right, what's not, and I can look at this in a sensible way. And I think we have to, really look at the data and what is the quality of the data? What does the data show? Why are we confused? The science is funded by food industry. That confuses the science. The government's policies are kind of corrupt because of the food industry influence. And then American Heart Association, Diabetic Nutrition Associations are all funded by the food industry. So the information we get from them isn't that helpful. They say Tricks are for kids is a healthy cereal. They have American Heart Check on as a heart healthy cereal, which has got 7 teaspoons of sugar in a serving for
Oh
a
my
kid in the morning.
gosh.
It's dessert. It's not breakfast. So I think we really have to kind of look more comprehensively at this. And that's really what I try to do in this book, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? I essentially went through every main thing we eat, not the ingredients. Like, I'm not talking about this oil or that chemical or this, I'm talking about what do we eat? We eat meat, we eat dairy, we eat poultry, we eat fish, we eat vegetables, we eat grains, we eat meat. What is the truth about all those, and how do we make sense of it? What do we know? What do we don't know? What are the main things we need to know? What are the controversies, and what are the myths that have been propagated, and what does the science really show? So that's really what I set out to do, and I'm super excited about this book, more than almost any that I have written, because it really is sort of an eater's guide to food in the 21st century in 2018, that it teaches you how to eat food that's good for your health, that's good for the planet, for the climate, for the economy, for even helping address poverty and violence and educational disparities. I mean, you name it, food is at the center of all of it.
Mm-hmm. What I loved about your book is, like I already said, it was so easy to read, and it wasn't like a fear mongering thing, or it was just okay, here's what you can do now, and here are the steps you can take now, and here's why you want to do it. I really like right at the end. I like the how you broke down all the food additives, because even I
Oh
didn't
my
know. I
God.
mean,
Yeah.
I geek out on that stuff, but some people might be afraid of it, but I like to be a food detective. I like to look at the labels. If I'm actually going to eat a packaged food, I want to know what's in it. And you go through and really break down, like, these are the things you want to avoid, and I learned some new things. Um what should we know? Like, just give us some examples from your book. What should we know about food additives that we should look to avoid?
Well, the truth is that if you look at a label and you wouldn't have that ingredient in your kitchen to cook with, you probably shouldn't eat food with it. In other words, you have butylated hydroxytoluene in your cupboard in a little shaker that you can sprinkle on your food. Probably not, right? So I think these are just simple principles. If it's not something that you can pronounce, it's in Latin, or you don't understand it, or you never heard of it, it's usually not good for you. Now, the problem is there have been so many additives added to food over the last 100 years. There's 3,000 additives in our food. There's very few of them that actually have been tested adequately, and they're passed by the FDA as safe until we learn that they're not. And there's so many examples, like trans fats, for example, margarine, Crisco, shortening. They're all part of our diet without ever being proven to be safe. And now they're not now they fall in the category of, quote, not recognized as safe, or generally not, like we call it GRAS certification, or generally recognized as safe. And then there's a lot of things that are in our food that we think are healthy. For example, carrageenan or xanthan gum, and a lot of health food store products that are gums and thickeners that cause leaky gut. There's plastic containers we use for things like they have bisphenol A and phthalates, which are quite toxic. There's all kinds of food additives that are really chemically damaging. For example, calcium propionate is in all wheat. It's a mold retardant and a preservative. And calcium propionate is propionic acid, is one of the short chain fatty acids from the gut. When it's out of balance and it's in excess, it can cause autism and neurodevelopmental issues and psychiatric problems, because it's a neurotoxin in animals that causes autism when you stick it in their brains. So the other big category is artificial sweeteners, which are terrible for us in many ways. They cause weight gain, they cause diabetes, they cause damage to our gut microbiome, they alter our hunger and regulatory things. We just want to stay away from those. So those are just some of the big things out there. Um, there's also things that we actually may not even be listed on the label. For example, autoimmunity can be caused by damage to the gut, and what they've done to take a lot of foods and make them stick together is they use it's called microbial transglutaminase, and it's a form of gluten that's made in the laboratory by bacteria manufacturing it, and then they use it in food to stick the food together, because gluten is like glue, right? And it's how bread sticks together. But they use it in these processed foods. You don't even know you're getting it because it's not even on the label. So generally, my view is, unless it's from some company that has integrity, and that everything is listed on the label, and then it's just real food. I mean, if it says water, salt, and tomatoes, that's fine. If it says sardines and olive oil and salt, that's fine. You know what it is, right? But
Right.
it's stuff that you can't recognize or pronounce, or you don't know what it is, I would definitely stay away.
Now, in your book, you have a lot of resources. You suggest that people go to the website to check out different lists and different resources. Do you have a list, or maybe you could create one, a list of brands or companies that you've done your research and seen that their products have integrity?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do talk about it in the book. It's not just sort of philosophy and science. I actually say, okay, well, if you're going to eat, you know, vegetables, how do you know they're safe and they're not full of pesticides? Or if you're going to eat meat or grains, what are the companies you should pick and what are the brands you should pick? All that's in there. How do you source the stuff that's healthy and good? And it's really a very practical eater's guide. Thrive Market is an amazing company where they've done a lot of that homework, and everything's clear and listed. Amazing food there that they have. It's all well sourced. They're even starting a whole regenerative agriculture process out there, which is pretty amazing.
I love
So
it.
how do we then look at foods from not just organic or grass fed, but do these foods help restore and regenerate soil? For example, you can have the best organic food in the world, but if it's grown in soil that's tilled, the tilling causes soil erosion. That prevents carbon from becoming sequestered in the soil. That prevents the soil from holding enough water, leads to climate change and drought. And if you actually can't sequester carbon in the soil, then it goes to the oceans. It kills the phytoplankton. which provide 50% of our oxygen. So you could be eating organic food that's ending up causing climate change that actually then causes us to die because we suffocate because there's not enough oxygen. So it gets complicated, but I go through how to make that really simple choices in the book and make it really, really clear.
Very cool. And I did find that. Let's talk a bit about the fat controversy because like I said, I had Dr. Esselstyn on and he said that fat is the main cause of heart disease. And
Mhm.
and then we have other cardiologists who say otherwise. Should
Yeah,
we eat the low fat diet, the high fat diet, the medium fat
yeah.
diet? What's going on with that?
Well, listen, it's not my opinion. I think there's a number of people like Esselstyn and others out there who are basically low fat fanatics. I would just say they're not following the science, and they and the truth is, you take anybody who's eating a typical American diet and you put them on a whole foods plant-based diet, even a slow fat, they're going to get better, right? For a while, and then there's going to be issues. And I think, you've got the head of Cleveland Clinic, who's of the cardiology department there, who says, look, we got the whole story wrong on fat. We got the story wrong on saturated fat. You've got the government and the Dietary Guidelines Committee in 2015 turned over 35 years of advice saying, oh, sorry, guys, we got it wrong. You don't have to limit fat at all in your diet. And you don't have to limit dietary cholesterol because dietary cholesterol has nothing to do with heart disease. Sorry. And then, of course, they still say we should limit saturated fat, but they are called to task by the National Academy of Sciences in November by a report that showed that there was a lot of corruption in how they made their decisions and choices for
Mm.
what's in the guidelines, and that they ignored huge amounts of data, for example, on saturated fat, where, I mean, that's not just one study. There's 17 meta-analysis that review all the studies that show that people who consume saturated fat and total fat, there's no link to heart disease, none, zero. In many, many studies, for example, the 42 country studies, a lot of the original data was based on Ansel Keys, and he correlated saturated fat from countries, 7 countries, and seemed to show a correlation, but that doesn't prove cause and effect. And so he actually promoted this whole idea that then ended up being in the literature, and it was never really proven. And in fact, he tried to prove it. This is a very interesting story. He did this research at the end of the 60s, say, okay, if saturated fat's bad, I'm going to prove it. So he had 9,000 people who were basically institutionalized, mental patients who were institutionalized, separated them into two groups. Half of them got high saturated fat diets, half of them got higher vegetable oil, corn oil diet. And what they found was, despite lowering cholesterol with the corn oil, which it does, these vegetables do lower LDL cholesterol, for every 30-point drop in cholesterol, there was a 22% increase in heart attacks. And the saturated fat group had much better health outcomes than the vegetable oil group, which was amazing. And guess what? This study was buried in a basement because he couldn't understand the results. He didn't want to publish it. It wasn't published for 40 years.
Oh my gosh.
It was recently just published. And then there's other studies. That's a randomized controlled trial. There are very few of those of that scale ever published. Another one, the Predimed study, and these are studies that prove cause and effect, not just correlation. Another study, Predimed study, done in Spain, 7,000 people. They were randomized to low-fat diets or high olive oil, a liter a week. They had to consume a liter a week, or a big hunk of nuts every day. And they had to stop the study after 4.8 years because people who weren't consuming the fat were dying. And it was unethical to withhold olive oil and nuts from them because they were dying. So I think Dr. Esselstyn says, we shouldn't eat nuts, we shouldn't eat olive oil, we should have avocados, we should have seeds. This doesn't make any scientific sense anymore. And we know from these large randomized trials, and we know other supportive data, like the Pure study showed 135,000 people, 5 continents, 18 countries, over 10 years, showed no correlation between animal protein, animal fat, and heart disease, and actually a correlation with cereal grains and potatoes. Another study, 42 country study, not just 7 countries, but looking at dietary consumption patterns, found incredible results which showed animal fat and protein were associated with lower risk of heart attacks, and actually the cereal grains were associated with higher risk of heart attack. So I think we got the whole story wrong. There are some variations, and some people might not tolerate saturated fat as well, but total fat for sure has been debunked as a theory. And the saturated fat, I think, will come out in the wash to be neutral and not a big deal at all, except for a few people who might have genetic issues with it.
Yeah, when interviewing these low fat or fanatics, as you say, but these low fat doctors, something didn't sit well with me. Although they get results, they say that their patients no longer have heart disease or no longer have diabetes, and yet I reversed my own polycystic ovarian syndrome. I no longer have it, and I used it with very high healthy fats. And that was one of the ways that I also had type 2 diabetes. I reversed that as well using food and
That's right.
supplements
That's right.
and I ate a very high I ate 12 eggs a day.
Yeah.
But I
That's
mean, I
right.
wouldn't recommend that for everyone, but I was
No.
working with some naturopaths and they said, okay, your fat levels are so low. And so I ate organic, of course, 12 eggs a day with runny
Yep.
yolks and lots of
Yep.
vegetables, just tons of
Yep.
vegetables. And I reversed diseases that going to the MDs for 20 years couldn't help me reverse.
No, this is actually happening. There's a couple of interesting stories of elite athletes who were finding that they were carb loading and they were getting pre-diabetes,
Mm.
even though they were extremely fit. I mean, they would swim from Catalina Island to LA, or they'd row from Los Angeles to Hawaii on a boat, and they were pre-diabetic. And this one of the guys started a company called Verta Health, which is an online platform. I have no financial or any connection to this company, but they put people on ketogenic diets, which is 70% fat. It's an extremely high fat diet, very, very low carbohydrate diet. And in they reversed diabetes in over 60% and literally gone, completely gone. And 90, I think 4% got off their medications and insulin, which is unheard of in traditional practice. And this is by eating extremely high fat diet. So I think we really need to look at this. And I know my own body. I mean, I've seen my body composition change when I switched to a higher fat diet and eating mostly protein, vegetables, and lots of fat. I'm 58 and my body fat's super low. I don't exercise as much as I'd like. It's not because I'm working out in the gym. It's food, and it's impressive to see that my muscle mass is increasing at 58 without even exercising, because high fat diets increase muscle mass, and you probably notice the same thing.
I did the ketogenic diet. I'm keto adapt. I did it a few times, and I found though that I tend if I go on the ketogenic diet and I don't really stay disciplined, I tend to just go more Atkins and just eat way too much meat, and I start feeling like over toxic, and I got to remind myself that it's not about meat, it's about vegetables and fat, and the meat is like I love how you put it. Meat should be a condiment in your book because I kind of I've noticed I catch myself getting lazy because meat is just so easy, right? It's just throw a slab
Yeah,
of meat there and
yeah,
cook it and whatever, and that's not health either. Just a slabs of meat every day for every meal is also not healthy. Because I was really neglecting the amount of vegetables I should be eating. And looking at all the diets in which doctors are able to get amazing health results, all of them include um, lots of great vegetables. Do you think
yeah.
that
It
the,
has.
the key to health is just tons of
I think it is. I mean, I kind of joke and talk about a vegan diet, but essentially paleo vegan, which is we should be eating mostly plants. It's good for the earth. It's good for us. They're full of phytochemicals and phytonutrients, and it's important for us to consume large amounts of that, and then small amounts of protein and a lot of fats. Now, the issue around the protein is interesting. We do as we age need more protein, and I think one of the issues around the environmental movement is sort of eat less meat, right? We should not eat meat. And I just kind of want to take a turn there for a minute because,
Absolutely.
I was sort of jokingly going to write a blog called Reverse Climate Change, Eat Meat, which is the opposite of what everybody thinks. And the reason I want to write that blog is because the argument's oversimplified. No, we should not be eating factory farm meat. We should not be eating CAFO meat. It's bad for the animals. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for climate. It's bad for our health. We should really boycott that, in my view. But because that's true, this way of farming actually is a huge contributor to climate change. In fact, our food system as a whole is the number one contributor to climate change. However, um, when we say eat less meat, it's because of that. But the question is, what kind of meat are we eating? If we're eating grass-fed meat, it's a different story. There's a whole now science of regenerative agriculture, which most people don't know about. But there's a new book called Kiss the Ground Out, which is an amazing book about the story of how it's all about the soil, that the soil is the key to our health in so many ways. It
Mm-hmm.
is there were 60 million buffalo roaming America. They weren't contributing to climate change because they were building soil. They were pooping on it and peeing on it and digging it up and grazing and then letting the grass grow. The carbon from the environment gets sequestered or held in the soil. It's one of the biggest carbon sinks we have, but we've created enormous desertification in the way we farm. We've lost over 1.1 billion acres of arable land, and now we we have deserts and the soil. I mean, we had so many feet of topsoil in America. It's all gone because we till it. It's soil erosion, and the way we grow crops for animals, the way the animals are grown, all contributes to this. Even organic food, if you're eating organic and it's tilled, you're actually contributing to climate change by eating organic vegetables. So by using animals as part of the natural cycle of agriculture and grazing lands, you can actually use lands that can be restored from deserts. You can actually sequester the carbon. And based on scientific calculations, we can sequester enough carbon to actually reduce our carbon in the environment to pre-industrial days. What's also amazing is that soil has a lot of organic matter stores huge amounts of water. So we're seeing huge droughts. We're seeing fires. We're
Mm.
seeing flooding because the soil can't hold the water. All of these things are happening because of how we grow food, and the fact that animals are so important. It's really quite amazing. Was a recent blog on I think a blog called Civil Eats by a farmer who's an amazing woman who's has taken this denuded, disrupted land and bringing it back to life by actually properly grazing animals and properly, actually helping the soil regenerate. It's pretty cool, actually.
I love it, and I love the concept of like biodynamic farming. I don't know if you know this, but I completed the Institute for Integrative Nutrition's program. You, of course, being one of the teachers, and I loved your talk. And I also learned about biodynamic farming and about how when the soil is healthy, when there's thousands of really great microbes and bacteria in that soil, then you get that bacteria and it gets transferred into your gut and it becomes part of the diverse gut biome. And if
Yeah,
you eat an organic raw strawberry grown in these types of biodynamic farms that have the
yeah,
healthy bacteria living on the strawberry, and you eat that specific type of bacteria also helps your body digest, absorb, and assimilate the nutrients from strawberries. And
yeah,
so the
yeah,
more we take care of our soil, the more we're going to be able to absorb and digest and assimilate nutrients, because we're also taking care of the ecology of our internal environment, which is really fascinating. um, Now, so what you're saying is that when we do choose to eat meat, which you're saying you don't sit down and eat a 24-ounce steak like like you
no,
live in
no,
Texas,
no,
but you're saying like 4 ounces to 6 ounces is a
yeah,
healthy meal. Were you saying like
yeah.
once a day or three
It
times a day?
depends. It depends. I think as we're younger, we have more resiliency. We can get protein from other sources, hemp seeds and chia seeds and nuts, and we can get it from some beans and grains. But I think that as we get older, the data shows that we need more protein because we lose muscle, and that's how the aging process starts. So at different times of your life, depending on your health, your athletic ability, your situation. For example, for you, your PCOS, you have insulin resistance genetically. I would never put you on a high carb diet. I would never get you eating a lot of grains and beans for protein. I think you have to eat 3 cups of beans to have 1 one equivalent of a 6-ounce piece of salmon, you have 0 carbs in the salmon. You have 100 grams of carbs in the beans. Now, a lot of that's fiber and other things, but still, it's a big load.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think it's personalized, and it also depends on how athletic you are, your body composition, if you're obese, if you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So we customize this, and I talk about how to do that in the book. But I think at the end of the day, it's about the basic principles of eating real food. It's not so complicated. It's raised eating food that's raised the right way, that contributes to the right health of the soil, the health of our bodies. It's higher nutrients. And even wild food is really important for us to consider to try to get more of. It's hard, but people go forage. I go foraging in the spring. There's ramp in the backyard. There's wild leeks. There's dandelion greens. We think they're weeds, but they're actually quite good.
I'm lucky to have a big backyard. We're on 5 acres just outside of Seattle, and so yeah, we get the dandelion greens um and we have lots of blackberries and raspberries, and we get lots of deer eating them too. So we joke that that's our emergency storable food that comes to visit our yard every day. So in case of an emergency, we have 5 deer that we have to chase down if there's ever a crisis. Now you mentioned fiber, like the all the fiber in beans, for example. In your book, you said in the Paleolithic era, which happened before we really started to perform agriculture, that we were eating around 200 grams of fiber a day, whereas now we're getting maybe 8 or 9. How
Yeah.
much does fiber play a role in our health, and what should our fiber goals be?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We ate 800 different species of plants as hunter-gatherers. We ate so much fiber. Dennis Burkitt was a scientist from the UK, went to Africa, and he noticed that the African stool weight was like 2 pounds, and the average American or Westerner stool weight was 4 ounces. And that all has to do with fiber. So fiber is important because it actually fertilizes the good bacteria in the gut. And our microbiome, it turns out, is probably the most important determinant of our health, which is this whole ecosystem of complex bacteria in our gut. And when we feed them junk food, they turn into junky bacteria and they produce all sorts of nasty chemicals. When we feed them a lot of fiber, soluble, insoluble fiber, it makes a huge difference in keeping the health of our microbiome. So for many reasons, it's really critical. And the average American, I think, it's 8 to 15 grams of fiber a day.
What should our goal be? Should we be reaching for 25 or for 50 grams of fiber? A mix of insoluble and soluble. What should we be kind of what should we set as our bar now, our new normal?
Well, I mean, I think 50 grams is a good thing to shoot for. You can take supplemental fiber. There's also prebiotic fibers like acacia fiber and cognac fiber and glucomannan and all these great fibers that are really available to us now that you can, put in your smoothies or add to your thing. You have to start slow because if you're not used to eating it, you can get you can get into trouble. But you have to drink lots of water as well.
Now, in your book, you talk about if someone is maybe eating the standard American diet at this point, and while they're reading your book, they might still be addicted to sugar, or still they might have some food addictions they need to detox from. And you recommend that they go on your 10-day sugar detox. If someone's reading your book and they perhaps have diabetes, for example, or they know they have a pre-diabetes, there's new statistics to show that about 50% of the American population is leading up towards diabetes or currently has diabetes. And
Oh yeah.
before that, I heard that it was 1/3, but now I'm hearing that it's
No, it's
50%.
half of Americans have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. 90% of them are not diagnosed. And it may be even more because 70% of Americans are overweight, and most people who are overweight have some degree of insulin problem. Not everybody, but most. So I think, we're talking about enormous amounts of people. And the reason is that we are biologically designed to crave and love sugar. Why? Because it helps us store fat for the winter when there's famine, when we can't hunt and gather and find the animals. If we can eat anything that's starchy or that has carbs or sugar, like honey or berries, we will literally put on weight right away. And that's a good thing from an evolutionary point of view. Now, in an era, we have 152 pounds of sugar and 133 pounds of flour, which is actually worse than sugar. we actually are in a toxic situation where we have almost a pound of flour and sugar per person in America consumed every day. And these are pharmacologic doses that spike insulin, that cause hunger, that store fat, that prevent fat from being released from the fat cells. And this is all due to this insulin factor. And it causes addiction in the brain, just like heroin or cocaine. This is well documented by the science. So in order to actually reset, it's almost like you have to hit the reset button. It's like when your computer's going strange and nothing works and nothing's fixing. You just kind of restart the whole thing and it seems to work. Well, it's kind of like that. Think about it as a reboot and a reset where you can literally change within even 3 days. You can end those cravings. You eat more fat, you cut out the starch and sugar, you eat good quality protein, lots of veggies, and it's a very simple approach. But I've had people come up and say, Dr. Hyman, I did this and I was on 52 units of insulin, and like within a few days I had to get off my insulin. My cravings went away. I've been craving my whole life. I thought this was just me. It's a moral failing. It's just biology. And when you use science to fix biology, you don't have to worry about willpower.
I love it. Now, why is flour worse than sugar?
Well, it has a higher glycemic index than sugar. So in other words, it raises your blood sugar more than table sugar. So we think, oh, we talk about complex carbs. Well, that simple complex carb notion is a very outdated concept. What's replaced it is the idea of glycemic index or glycemic load, which essentially is about the ways in which these things affect your blood sugar and insulin. So flour products in general are not your friend, whether it comes from whole grain brown rice flour or some, fancy flour. It's all just like sugar. And you want to eat whole grains? Okay, but eat the whole grain, not whole grain flour. Even whole wheat bread is not great. So I think that's a myth people get into, is saying, "Oh, I'm having whole wheat bread. It's healthy." It's not.
Oh yes, I was I was raised with a mom who was a total health nut. So we went to a naturopath, and from age 6 to age 13, I never got sick. We ate a whole foods diet. I ate like rice dream instead of ice cream, carob instead of chocolate, packed lunches, everything. And we took supplements. And then at age 13, I rebelled and started eating the cafeteria food, and my health went downhill.
Yep.
And about age 18, 19, I thought, I started working out 5 days a week at the dojo. And I thought, I'm going to eat with all the other black belts because they're super healthy. And so what we all did was we ate a bunch of whole wheat bread, and I gained so much weight, and while I was working out so much, and I could not believe at how it was one of the reasons why I became diabetic. And I just couldn't believe that something that Canada told me was healthy. We got the food pyramid going on, and they told me this is, eat the most thing you should eat on your plate should be lots of whole grain bread. It's like
Well,
the biggest
here's
thing.
the thing you said that I don't want people to miss because it's critically important. That you were working out like a maniac and you were gaining weight.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something people don't realize because the messaging from our government, from public health associations, is you should eat less and exercise more in order to lose weight. And this is one of the biggest lies and falsehoods and myths out there, that it's just about calories in, calories out. What's true is that it's about the quality of the calories you eat, not the amount. And if you focus on what you're eating and not how much, you will naturally do the right things. So it's very, very important for you to understand that you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet, that you actually have to make sure that you're eating the right foods, and then you don't have to worry about quantity. In fact, there was a study recently done, which just was published, looking at a low fat, low calorie, restricted diet compared to a high fat, low carb, unrestricted diet. I mean, you can eat as much as you want. So when we're told they had to restrict calories, low calorie, those you can eat as much as you want and as much fat, but you had to really limit carbohydrates. And what happened was that after a year, the low fat group did worse. They didn't, the higher fat group that ate as much as they wanted lost more weight. Their blood sugars were better. Their insulin was better. Their blood sugar was better. Their cholesterol was better. It was pretty impressive. And this was a randomized controlled trial. This is been repeated over and over and over again. There were 53 randomized trials recently reported in Lancet Diabetes that were a year or more. This was the gold standard of testing. And what they found was that the people who had the low-fat diets did worse. Now, compared to a standard American diet, if you get on a healthy low-fat diet, you'll do better, right? But compared head-to-head to high-fat, low-fat, the high-fat every time won out. And the bigger the discrepancy in the fat, in other words, the more fat you eat and the less carbs, then the bigger the weight loss. This contradicts everything we know. So you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. You really need to focus on eating the right foods,
Mm.
and that means low glycemic foods.
Got it. And I love low glycemic book. It's a really easy read, and the cardiologist who created it, so originally from Toronto, so my neck of the woods, our neck of the woods, and I liked how he came across discovering and looking into it, that he sent this farmer home to basically die. He had already had lots of clogged arteries. He had nothing else the cardiologist could do for him, and he said, and his last words were, the patient said, well, what should I do? And he said, well, go eat healthy. And so the guy came back months later with no clogs in his heart. And the cardiologist was like, what did you eat? And that was the birth of looking into, oh my gosh, food could be what's going to
Yeah,
unclog our arteries. And
yeah.
I love it when doctors have that revelation, because it just boggles my mind that it's not taught in medical school, that the emphasis on food as medicine is not taught. Why is that?
Um, it's because we don't think it's important. I just amazing to me how we've neglected nutrition, and yet food is the cause of disease. It's the cure for disease, and yet doctors know pretty much nothing about food. Most 25% or less have the recommended amount by the National Academy of Sciences for Nutrition Education. And then what they do have is often very limited or often just focused on, for example, for example, like malnutrition, right? Like kwashiorkor or marasmus. When I had a course in nutrition in medical school, it was interesting. It was all about like Africa and malnutrition and rickets and things like that, which, we don't see. We see problems of what we call over consumption, undernutrition. They're overfed and undernourished.
Mm-hmm. It's just boggles my mind. I mean, I not to get too much into the conspiracy of it, but my understanding is that it's the pharmaceutical companies who fund the universities, who want to,
Well, it's true.
build new wings on the universities and give them new libraries, and so they want
Yep.
to control the curriculum, and they have since the Flexner report.
Yeah,
So,
no, you're right. That's a whole long conversation about why we have the education we have. But it's also based on the sort of an artifact of history, which is sort of reactive. You have a headache, you go to the head doctor. You have a stomach ache, you go to the stomach doctor. What we're learning about through functional medicine is that that's systems medicine. This is not the way the body's actually organized. The body's organized into a systemic dynamic network where everything is connected and not just a bunch of separate parts. And so we're treating the symptoms, not the system. And it's like, it's the difference between being like an organic farmer a regenerative agriculture farmer who restores the soil and is a soil farmer as opposed to and plants are a healthy plants are a side effect versus an industrial agriculture farmer where they basically are pouring chemicals and not taking care of the soil and actually driving all sorts of issues that are unhealthy by not taking care of the actual soil. So they're just treating the body with chemicals and blocking and interfering with pathways instead of how do you create health. It's a very, very different view.
hmm we were talking about greens. What about gluten? My family and I have been gluten free for 7 years, not because we have an allergy to it, but we heard some lectures about how unhealthy it is for 100% of the population. And within 1 month of going gluten free, I dropped 25 pounds in water weight. My rings went, my wedding rings went down 1.5 sizes. My husband went down 2 sizes. we had our rings adjusted, and we've been wearing them ever since. We've been gluten-free ever since. We haven't regained all that water weight. And we have this game when we go grocery shopping or go to Costco. It's called Gluten Face, and we can pretty much look at someone's face, tell whether they're a gluten eater or not. And then we look in their carton, we can see gluten or not. But it's clear as day that you could give me a lineup of 100 people, and I could tell you which ones are gluten free. I can just see it in their face. It's a telltale sign. It's a little
Yes.
bit of dark under the eyes, a little bit puffy. Like maybe even if they're skinny, you can't really see their defined cheeks because they're just a little puffy, maybe a little puffy in the neck. And then those who don't eat gluten, especially children, it's like light behind the eyes. Like you could just see their eyes sparkle and with brilliance and clarity. Their skin
No,
is
that's true.
is so clean and clear, and it has a pinkness in the right areas, and you can tell there's blood flow. What's up with that? That you can clearly see, you can look at people and see whether they're gluten free or not.
Hmm.
And have you
It's
have you been
true.
able to detect that when you look at patients where you can tell like that their
Yeah.
health and why is
Yeah,
gluten?
I kind of have X-ray vision a little bit because when I've been doing medicine as long as I can tell what people's cholesterol are, what their blood sugar is, insulin, just by looking at them. I can tell whether they have inflammation, where it's coming from. It's not that hard, but you're right. I mean, I think that the question of gluten is a big one, and I just want to attack it from a number of angles. First is the issue of wheat in general. Uh, we're eating enormous quantities of refined flour, period, which is just like sugar. That's the main problem. And then the second is the quality of the wheat. The wheat that we're eating is dwarf wheat. It's hybridized wheat. The guy won the Nobel Prize for it. It's drought resistant, but it's got huge levels of a starch called amylopectin A. So it's a much starchier grain, which is much worse than sugar. It also has more gliadin proteins, which are very inflammatory. So you're not just getting the normal gluten that you'd get in an einkorn or Sumerian, ancient heirloom wheat. You're getting a funny kind of wheat that's got all sorts of more inflammatory proteins. On top of that, they spray glyphosate, which is a herbicide to exfoliate the wheat before they harvest it, which then ends up in the food, which alters your microbiome, can cause cancer, has many adverse effects. And then lastly, once they process the wheat, they put calcium propionate is a preservative, which is a mold retardant, and preservative, which is actually a neurotoxin, has been shown in animal models to induce autism. So there's a lot of reasons. Now, in terms of let's say, well, what about eating organic wheat, or what about eating non-GMO? What about all that? For sure is better. But it's still often the dwarf wheat, so you're getting a lot of these other problems. Can you get heirloom wheat? Yeah, you can get einkorn wheat, and they're making pasta from that and other ancient grains, which are awesome. And some people can tolerate that. But the truth is, and this is work from Dr. Fasano, who's the head of celiac at one of the world's leading researchers at Harvard. And he basically said, look, there's people who are celiac, 1%. There's a lot of people who have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which maybe 20% of the population. But he said in 100% of the population, people who eat gluten create tiny microscopic damage to their gut, which leads to inflammation. It produces in your body something called zonulin, which breaks up the linkages between your cells and your intestines so they become loose. We call that a leaky gut. And then food and bacterial particles leak through
Mm.
and end up causing inflammation. So that's why, I don't recommend people, be eating a ton of gluten. If you are and you do want to have gluten, try to have heirloom gluten. Try to make sure it's non-GMO. Make sure it's, not that's not sprayed with glyphosate. Make
But
sure that
that's kind of like
you
saying, oh, you want to eat McDonald's? Well, here are the healthier things to eat at McDonald's. It's like, no, it's still damaging to the
know,
body, right?
it's true.
We
It's
have to
true.
draw a
I'm not
line
a big fan
somewhere.
of it. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. But if you're super healthy and resilient, it's much more easy to do the right thing.
Got it. Now I have a few more questions left before we wrap up today. You mentioned you had mercury poisoning when you were in China. How did you recover from that?
Well, it was tough. I didn't know I had it for years, and so I was sick. I had severe gut issues. I was super healthy. I was riding my bike 100 miles a day, and then I couldn't walk up the stairs. Was cognitively impaired. I had severe muscle aches and fatigue. I got autoimmune reactions, allergy reactions, when I figured I was mercury, from breathing the coal soaked air and having tons of fish and having fillings in my mouth, I essentially fixed it, and I did chelation, I did IV glutathione, I worked on all of that. And it took many years because this was early on and we were just trying to figure it out. But I did, and It's amazing. I think one of the most discovered, underappreciated issues in our health is the load of environmental toxins, and mercury particularly is a big one that many people suffer from that are they're not aware of.
Mm-hmm. And my husband and I have been doing a heavy metal detox the last few months, and we actually just bought our first sauna. I'm so excited. And it's a Sunlighten. And then it turns out that you also love Sunlighten. I was talking to Alicia yesterday, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I love Dr. Hyman." And I just thought it was like, it was a little confirmation for me. I chose the right brand of sauna to go with.
There you
So
go.
I was really excited about that. Very cool. Well, I have a Facebook group, Learn True Health on Facebook, and I often get my listeners are asking to leave questions for the guests. Amy wanted to know. She says, "My herbalist told me I should never eat grains because I have dementia in my family, but my body reacts well to good whole grains like quinoa, brown rice, sprouted grains, etc. Also, when I'm not eating grains, I tend to eat more meat. What is your take on that?" So I would say that it's a blood sugar, right? That the reason why the uh her herbalist said don't eat grains is because she's afraid that blood sugar will cause dementia. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I do think that people who eat a high glycemic diet have a higher risk of dementia for sure. I think that we really want to be smart about what we're telling people, and it really is very individual. But I do think that we should all be eating extremely low glycemic diet. There's no question in my mind that that is a principle that no one can disagree with. That based on the research, we know that insulin resistance drives cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, many other things. So I think it's important, and I think we really have to do this, and I really have to get people to understand this principle. So whatever diet you're eating, it has to be low glycemic, and that regardless whether you're vegan or vegetarian. I have a friend who's a type 1 diabetic. She's a keto vegan, so it's
Wow, love it.
not easy to do. But she's actually only on 1 or 2 units of insulin, even though she's a type 1 diabetic, which is unheard of.
Now, did she was she able to lower her insulin resistance as a result?
Well, she wasn't insulin resistant, right? She was type 1 diabetic, so she had no insulin.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So she wasn't insulin resistant, but when people eat a ton of carbs and they're type 1 diabetic, the doctors say, well, just eat carbs, just take more insulin. What happens is you get double diabetes, type 1 and type 2. You become insulin resistant on a high carb diet while you're getting insulin. Then you need 40, 50, 60, 70 units of insulin when you should maybe only use 10 to 15 at the most.
Mm-hmm. So a type 1 can develop insulin resistance as well if they're eating a high carb diet that's or high glycemic diet and taking their insulin. And so what you're saying is that you want to use diet to help the body need as little amount of insulin as possible.
Exactly, exactly. And if you're type 2 diabetic, I mean, almost everybody can get off insulin, even if they've had been diabetic for a long time. You have to use a more aggressive approach, right? It's like, Benjamin Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So we need to make sure we work on the ounce of prevention instead of having to like do a ketogenic diet, and that's a bigger deal, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I love in your book when you said pegan, I laughed because I keep bouncing between paleo and vegan, and oftentimes I find myself just eating, like you suggest in the book, like make your vegetables be your main course and have that condiment of meat, which
Yeah,
is if all of the population ate that way, we would just eradicate so much disease. It's
yeah,
not funny. It's just it's
it's
absolutely
really easy.
amazing.
It's not that hard. Yesterday I had, basically I had a huge amount of broccolini and asparagus stir fry with ginger and garlic and avocado oil, and it probably was like took up an entire plate. And then I sort of took some tempeh. Sometimes I'll just have like tempeh, which is fermented soybeans, which has good quality protein, very low carb, and I stir fried that with some sesame oil and coconut aminos. It was delicious dinner, and I was satisfied. And it was basically, 80% vegetables. I just binged on those, filled up on those. And it's really easy to eat healthy, or you can just put a small piece of fish or chicken or organic meat or grass-fed meat in the um, plate in the pan and cook it, and you'll have a really great meal.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
For breakfast this morning, I had uh, a bulletproof coffee, which is basically MCT oil and grass-fed butter with a little coffee. And I had a bunch of um, nut butter, cashew butter, on a little gluten-free cracker.
Nice. Very cool. And did you already have your lunch?
Not yet. I'm actually not even hungry. It's like because I had the bulletproof coffee, I basically was in ketosis, and I mean, I have no desire to eat right now. And I ate it like 8 o'clock this morning, and it's almost 2 o'clock.
That's what I love. I had a chia pudding this morning, so that I made last
Yeah,
night. So
and
cinnamon and stevia and chia seeds and coconut milk, and it's delicious.
yeah, the whole thing is you don't want to be in deprivation. You don't want to starve yourself. You don't want to suffer. I'm not into suffering. I'm into pleasure. And I think if you know how to work your biology, then you can actually be fully satisfied and happy and energetic with your diet, and you don't have to deprive yourself. And
Hmm.
if you know what you're doing, you use willpower when nothing else works. But willpower is only something you can use for a little while. I would rather use science than willpower to fix my biology. So I naturally want to eat the right things. I mean, now I go by in the airport. I mean, I'm constantly assaulted by a toxic nutritional landscape because I travel a lot. And I just look at it, I'm like, that doesn't look like food to me. It's like looking at a rock. Why would I eat a rock? Like I see these big, giant, like muffins and bagels. I'm like, well, that doesn't look like food anymore. Like that's not something I would consume. It's like a rock. Why would I eat a rock or a stick? Like it's not.
You need to write a blog called Toxic Nutritional Landscape because that was hilarious. That's
Yeah.
exactly how I feel. I loved going. Actually, our family went sugar free also. When we went gluten free and then we went sugar free, and 99% of the food out there we can't eat, and it was actually a relief because I didn't have to exercise willpower because it's exactly what you described. It's like, why would I eat that? Like my body, that doesn't resonate with my body anymore, and so it made food choices so much easier to have that outline. I have one last question for you, and it's actually from Alicia at Sunlighten. She wanted to know, through all your research, what has shocked you the most to learn is true?
What has shocked me the most?
Mm-hmm.
Well, being a longtime vegetarian and low-fat advocate, I think it was pretty shocking for me to learn that fat was like one of the best things we can eat, and that meat wasn't the boogeyman if we eat the right meat. That actually can restore health, restore the environment, and and reverse climate change, and build our soils, and be part of a natural cycle. And we are nowhere near where we need to be in terms of how we're changing our food system. But the truth is that regenerative agriculture is just the light bulb went on for me. I'm like, this makes sense, right? This is how we need to be. We need to be soil farmers, and everything else will work out. We'll get healthier
Wow.
food. We'll get healthier animals. We'll save the planet. We'll save ourselves. It's just altogether pretty impressive.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Mark Hyman, for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure to have you here today. I cannot recommend your book enough. It was such a good read. I couldn't put it down. The link to your book is going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntourhealth.com. Food, what the heck should I eat? I actually think it'd be a great gift to also, to give to friends and family, because I think we all have that question. We all want to be healthier, but there's so much food confusion, and you really sift through a lot of food confusion and make it very simple, easy to understand, and bring all the science. And you also address the individuality of each person's going to need to adjust it for them, and you discuss how we can structure our diet for the best health for us and our needs. So great job with this book. I'd love to have you
Thank
back
you.
anytime you write a new book and you want a platform to share your information. You're welcome to come back.
Well, thank you. Happy to have a chance to be on your show and speak to your audience. And I hope people to come away from this feeling inspired and interested in sort of trying to sort through it. And I really took a lot of time and sifted through so much research, so you don't have to. And you can go learn about the book at foodthebook.com. There's a free video there on 4 biggest food lies. There's a whole roadmap guide of when you go grocery shopping, what did you bring into the grocery store where you can find out what to eat. It's very practical. It's really how to source things, where to find them, how to get stuff for less. It's really a kind of an eater's guide, and it's something that I think everybody should have in their home.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
I want to tell you about something I really believe in, which is nutrition. On my show, I get to talk to specialists throughout the entire health universe: chiropractors, herbalists, naturopaths, mental and emotional health coaches, and licensed healthcare providers. Amazing pieces to the puzzle we call health. All of these, of course, are supposing that you're actually eating. We, we eat to get all the raw building blocks our body requires. And that's where the problem starts. There's no more food in our food, right? I think everyone knows about the deficiencies in our soil that our food is grown in. Those deficiencies are passed down to us unless we can supplement. Which brings me to takeyoursupplements.com. These people work with my go-to doctor, my go-to naturopath, for all my supplements. I've used them for 7 years. My family and I love them. They work. And if you'd love to address your nutrient deficiencies and figure out what supplements are right for you, then you definitely want to go to takeyoursupplements.com. You put in your information, and within 24 hours, one of their health coaches contact you, and for free, will talk with you and figure out exactly what supplements are best for you, the highest quality for the lowest price that fit into your budget and address your nutrient needs. They're amazing coaches. I've known them for years. I love them. They're wonderful people. They have a huge heart, and they really want to help you to dial in your supplements and your diet and your lifestyle to achieve your health goals. So go to takeyoursupplements.com and put in your information now. That's takeyoursupplements.com. You will be very happy you did. Hello, True Health Seeker. I have a very exciting announcement. I have spent over a year, I've spent about 14 months collecting all of my information that I use with my clients for ending anxiety, and I created an online program. I'm very excited about it. We just launched it. And for you, for free, I have a webinar where I teach you 2 powerful mind tricks for removing anxiety, ending worry, and controlling fear so it stops controlling you and your life. In my free webinar, you will learn what causes anxiety and how to stop it, the science behind the mind-body connection, overcoming fear of public speaking, getting unstuck, ending that fear of things not working out, ending procrastination and overwhelm, and feeling excited, grounded, and calm instead of fear and worry. I have so much to teach you in my free webinar, and I'm really excited for you to come check it out. Go to freeyouranxiety.com/webinar. That's freeyouranxiety.com/webinar, or look in the show notes of today's podcast and you'll see the link there so you can jump into the webinar and learn all these wonderful, powerful tools that will end your anxiety and create excitement and happiness instead. Go to freeyouranxiety.com/webinar and sign up now, and I look forward to seeing you in the next live webinar.